Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, good morning everyone. We are from Group 8, and in this occasion, we're gonna present about first and second language acquisition. Before we start the explanation, let me introduce my group members. The first one is Della, Amalia, Putri, and then Mia, Gusti, Faradila, and Dian, Leoni, Andri, and the last Rahma, Kumala, Tsani. So the first language acquisition is a children that learn their native language, and second language acquisition is learning a language besides their native language. Okay, to certain time, my friends as the presenters will explain the material.
Okay, now we will talk about acquisition. Acquisition comes from the word to acquire, meaning to get something, to purchase, to earn, and to understand. Acquisition is also the process by which humans acquire the capacity to perceive and comprehend languages, as well as to produce and use words and sentences to communicate. It will be many months before babies' own vocalizations begin to reflect the characteristic of the language or language they hear, and longer still before they connect language sound with specific meaning. Then I'll move on to the acquisition schedule. All normal children develop language roughly the same time. Along much the time schedule, it will seem that the language acquisition schedule has the same basis as the biologically determined development of motor skills. This biological schedule is tied very much to the maturation of the infant's brain. Before children speak, they can process what they hear and we can identify what they are paying attention to. For example, when they are 1 month old, they can already distinguish ba and da. And then we will look at the cooing and babbling. The earliest use of speech like sounds has been described as cooing. During the first few months of life, the child gradually becomes capable of producing sequence of vowel-like sounds, particularly high vowels similar to U and I, then goes on to make sounds similar to filler consonants K and G. They produce a number of different vowels and consonants and is able to use their vocalizations to express emotions and emphasis. This late babbling stage is characterized by more complex syllable combinations, ma, da, gaba, and a lot of sound play and attempt imitations. And then we will look at the one word stage. Between 12 and 18 months, children begin to produce a variety of recognizable single unit utterance. This period, traditionally called the one word stage, is characterized by speech in which single terms are uttered for everyday objects such as milk, cookie, cat, cup, and spoon, and usually pronounced spoon. Other forms such as is, a, may occur in circumstances that suggest the child is producing a version of what's that. So the label one word for this stage may be misleading and a term such as single unit would be more accurate. We sometimes use the term holophrastic, meaning a single form functioning as a phrase or sentence to describe an utterance that could be analyzed as a word, a phrase, or a sentence.
The two word stage, depending on what we count as an courses of two consist words used together. The two word stage can begin about 18 to 20 months as the child's vocabulary moves beyond 50 words. By the time the child is 2 years old. A variety of combinations similar to baby chair, mommy eat, cat baby will usually have a period. The adult interpretation of such combination is, of course, very much tied to the context of their entourage. The parents' baby chairs might be taken as an expression of possession. This is baby chair or as a request. But baby in cars or a statement baby in the chair, depending on the street the circumstances. Telegraphy speech between 2 and 2.5 years, children begin to produce a large amount of speech that can be classified as many-word speech. The salient feature of the Eustace stops at the number of words, but variation in word form begin to emerge. The stage described as telegraphy speech is characterized by a series of words or laconic phrases in paragraphs or sentences such as "This soul all wet," "Cat drink milk and daddy go bye-bye." The child has clearly developed some sentence forming capacity at this stage and can get the word order right. While this type of telegram format speech was began produced, a number of grammatical changes began to appear in some tense and simple present tense in on while as used. Acquisition process. As the linguistic repertoire of the child increases, it is often assumed that the child is, in some sense, begin through the language. This ideal is not really supported by what the child actually does. For the vast majority of children, no one provides any instruction on how to speak the language. It is simply not possible that the child is acquiring the language precisely through a process of imitation adult speech. Certainly, children can be heard to repeat version of what adults say on occasion, and they are clearly in the process of adopting a lot of vocabulary from the speech they hear. One of the factors that seems to be important in the children acquisition process in the use of actual sound and word combination, either in interaction with other people or in wordplay itself, which seems to be an important element in the development of children's linguistic repertoire. Developing syntax. There have been numerous studies of the development of Tsani in children's speech. We will look at the development of two structures that seem to be acquired in a regular way by most English-speaking children. In the information of question and the use of negative there appear to be their inevitable stage. The age at which children go through this stage can vary quite a bit, but the general pattern seems to be that stage 1 occurs between 18 and 26 months, stage 2 between 22 and 30 months, and stage 3 between 24 and 14 months.
Developing morphology. The next morphological development is typically the marking of regular plurals with the S form, as in boys and cats. The acquisition of the plural marker is often accompanied by a process of overgeneralization. The chart overgeneralizes the apparent role of adding S to form plurals, and we'll talk about foods and men. Throughout the sequence there is a great deal of variability. Individual children may produce good forms one day and odd forms the next. The evidence suggests that the child is working out how to use the linguistic system while focused on communication and interaction rather than correctness. Developing semantics. There is a process called overextension, with the most common pattern is for the child to overextend the meaning of a word on the basis of similarities of shape, sound and size, and to a lesser extent movement and texture. The semantic development in a child's use of words is usually a process of overextension initially, followed by a gradual process of narrowing down the application of each term as more words are learned. Second, language learning. A distinction is sometimes made between learning in a foreign language setting or learning a language that is not generally spoken in the surrounding community, and a second language setting, or learning a language that is spoken in the surrounding community. That is, Japanese students in an English class in Japan are learning English as a foreign language, or AFL, and if do some students were in an English class in the USA, they will be learning English as a second language, or ASL. In either case, they are simply trying to learn another language, so the expression second language learning is used more generally to describe both situations. Acquisition and learning. A more significant distinction is made between acquisition and learning. The term acquisition is used to refer to the gradual development of ability in a language by using it naturally in communicative situations with others who know the language. Activities associated with acquisition are reduced experience by the young child, and by analogy, those who pick up a second language from long periods spent in interaction, constantly using a language with native speakers of the language. Those individuals whose L2 exposure is primarily a learning type of experience tend not to develop the same kind of general proficiency as those who have had more of an acquisition type of experience. Acquisition barriers. This has been demonstrated that students in their early teens are quicker and more effective L2 learners in the classroom than, for example, 7-year-olds. It may be, of course, that the effective learning of an L2, even with a trace of an accent, requires a combination of factors. The optimum age for learning may be during the years for about 10 to 16, when the flexibility of our inherent capacity for language has not been completely lost, and the maturation of cognitive skills allows a more effective analysis of the regular features of the L2 being learned.
Effective feature. The nature are typically much more is a strong element of unwillingness or embarrassment in a typing to produce the different sound of another language, then it may avoid whatever physical and cognitive empathy there are. It is self-considered as accompanied by a lack of empathy with another culture. For example, feelings no identification with a speaker or their custom. Then the sub effects of not really wanting to sound like a Russian or German or American may strongly inhibit in the learning process. This type of emotion resistance or effects may also be caused by dull textbooks, unpleasant classroom surroundings, or an exhausting schedule of study or work. All these negative feelings or experiences are effective factors that can create a barrier to recursions. Focus on method. The first, the grammar translation method. The grammar translation method that the most traditional approach is to treat L2 learning in the same way as any other academic subject. This method has its roots in the traditional teaching of Latin and it is described as the grammar translation method. Next, second is the audio lingual method. An approach called the audio-linguist method was strongly influenced by a belief that the first use of a language was essentially a set of habits that could be developed with a lot of practice. Much of this practice involved hours spent in the language laboratory repeating oral truths. Next, the last is communicative approach. More recent revisions of the L2 learning experience can best be described as communication approach. There are partly reactions against the artificiality of pattern practice, and also against the belief that conclusively learning the grammar loss of a language will necessarily result in the ability to use the language. Next, focus on the learning. The first is transfer, and the second is interlanguage, and the third is motivation, and last is input or output. Communicative competence can be defined as generally ability to use language accurately, appropriately, and flexibly. The first component is grammatical competence, which influences the accurate use of the words and structure. The ability to use approving the language is the second component, called social linguistic competence. It enables the learning to know when to say, "Can I have some water?" versus "Give me some water." According to the social context, the third component is called strategic competence. This is the ability to organize a message effectively and to compensate via strategies for any difficulties. In the outdoor use, learning inevitable experience moments when there is a gap between communicative intent and their ability to express that intent. Next, about linguistics. The ability to investigate the complex nature of auto learning, we have to appeal to deals not only from linguistic analysis, but from other fields such as communication studies, education, psychology, and sociology. This large-scale endeavor is often described as applied linguistics because it represents an attempt to deal with a large range of particle influences language, not only L2 learning.
Okay, that's all our explanation. For the discussion time, we open three questions. If you have any question, feel free to ask. Sorry if there are any mistakes. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.